Um, my name is Shaun Richardson. I'm the GM of Laffort USA. So give you a kind of scenario of what we're going to do here. Andy Shillington, you all know Andy because he's your Cellar-Tek guy. They're the company that distribute Laffort products in British Columbia. We're going to talk about practical applications of what to do with smoke taint, because you had a big fire 2 months ago, and there's likely to be smoke taint in your fruit. And this is what you can do about it. The big factor to bear in mind is there is no silver bullet for smoke taint. You can help mitigate it. That's really what you can do. And a lot of this webinar is some of the practical tips that we've learned. And I can say I have firsthand experience. In the past 4 years, I've been evacuated twice for fires. And last year, 2020, the estimate of fruit left hanging on the vine in mainly Napa and Sonoma counties, but also the Central Coast, was about 365,000 tons of grapes in California. So that's the extent of the fire damage from last year. It was pretty ugly. It was a very ugly crash, honestly. We thought COVID was bad and it just got worse. Anyway, but there's stuff you can do. Andy is here. He's going to scroll through the questions. If you have any questions, type them into the Q&A feature. So it's down on the bottom right hand. There's those little 3 buttons that you see on all these video conferences. Open up the Q&A feature. Got questions? Type them in. I can't see that right now because I'm in presenter view, but Andy can then reach in and say, "Hey, Shaun, I got a question about this," and then we can address it as we go. So I'm totally fine with interruptions. What else do we need to know? Andy's from Cellar-Tek. I'm from Laffort USA. Really, this audience is just for British Columbia. It's like we're just focused on you guys. We do not have any fires right now in California, I'm glad to say. So without further ado, let's launch into it. We're going to look at 6 different things, right? And in terms of timing, we should be done. I rehearsed this yesterday. It takes 22 minutes. I normally speak a little faster when I present. So, and then room for questions, we may be 25 minutes. We'll get it done as quick as we can, and to the point as we can. So 6 topics: microferments, what analysis means, using ozone, using activated carbon, using yeast products, and using reverse osmosis. Now, Laffort do supply a couple of these products, but some of the other stuff, it's nothing to do with us. So this is really, I'm looking at what's been out there and proven to work, okay? This one here is the first one. Now, I remember back in 2017 when we had our first big fires in California. Even though I am Australian, I had to call our Australian manager and say, "What do you guys do? You guys have problems too." And he said, "Do this. Go out into the field, pick a 20-litre bucket, ferment it, and smell it in 7 days. And if your wine stinks, then you have a problem. Don't pick it." Now, that was a big shock. And I think in 2017, absolutely nobody was interested in doing that. No interest at all. It's like, nah, we'll be fine. We'll figure it out. But it's a very good technique to figure out what you're looking at down the track. The smoke taint's in there. You may as well find out sooner rather than later. And you can use that in conjunction with any of the other tools here as well. So microferments, it's a really good way to get an idea of what's out there in your field. Right. The other way, in theory, to get an idea of what's out there in your vineyards is analysis. Now, there's more than one technique of analysis. There's more than one analyte. None of them are all 100%. This is what smoke taint is. They're all indicator compounds. Okay, so your analysis you get back, it doesn't tell you. It tells you you've got smoke taint possibilities, right? But it can't really quantify how bad it is. So, for example, these 3 wines here, we're looking at some berry samples we did. The first 2 compounds, 4-methylguaiacol and guaiacol, are the 2 that are the most well known, and that's the quick panel that you get done at ETS. These are actually, these are not ETS numbers. These are from Excel Labs. But that's the quick panel. 4-methylguaiacol, guaiacol, they're the ones you should people worry about, right?
Cresols, syringol, total phenols, not all phenolic compounds, but phenols related to smoke taint. These are other more expansive criteria, right? But catch with the analytical stuff is you don't really know exactly how bad your wine is until you've tasted it as well. Right? Analytical technique and the variability in the matrix, even things like Syrah. Syrah has guaiacol in it. So if you analyze Syrah, you're going to have guaiacol. It is what it is. Couple that with last year smoke taint analysis in at ETS labs, there was a 10-week wait time. So there was no way you were going to get numbers. Take your numbers, if you get them, with a grain of salt and look at all of the other aspects. What does your fruit taste like? What do your bucket ferments taste like? They are equally important to seeing your numbers. And here's some examples of what ETS are recommending for what to do with your numbers. So for example, in your berry tests, if you're above 2, there's a very high anticipated risk of impact, right? If you are above 6 in a bucket ferment, right, it's very likely you have smoke taint. So these are some general indicators, but be wary of this. Honestly, I think the bucket ferments and a good sensor analysis of that is probably a stronger impact. And ash. If the fire was so bad that you have ash physically on your grapes, that's a stronger indication you have a problem. Right? So what can we do? Right? You're in a situation, you've had smoke, you've had fires, you're not sure exactly how bad it is. What can you do? Now, I was actually up in British Columbia last week, and I know that Matt at Blue Mountain is using this technology, the ozone. It's basically you pick your fruit into half-ton macro bins, or you can use quarter-ton ones as well, with slotted sides. You load up your container, you put about 20 tons of grapes in a 40-foot container. You fill it with ozone. It's about 1 milligram per liter, or 1 ppm for 24 hours. It does remove the guaiacol and the 4-methyl guaiacol. The results are somewhat variable, according to the reports from California last year. But in general, it helps. Right? It's a technology that can help you, and that's what you need with all of these smoke taint remediation techniques. Anything that can push your wine into a commercially acceptable wine is what you're looking for. I feel I just realized here this is such a doom and gloom from presentation. So Andy, if I sound too doom and gloomy, just let me know. But really, it's we're looking at how can you help your wines here. All right, ozone is a viable technique. It's not my business, so I don't know a lot about it, but it's some good things. The next thing are the products. So we do products, right? So, and we had a lot of donated fruit last year to do trials for this. There was so much fruit available. So what we did last year was we just went for it. It's what can we try and see works, right? So we've got fruit from 3 different AVAs, from Washington State, from the central coast of California, from Napa. We've got 4 different varieties. And we did 122 of those bucket ferments. Most of these trials are duplicate, some are triplicate as well. We looked at activated carbon, geosol. We looked at yeast derivatives, milk products, polylacts is PVPP and casein, straight casein, Mechnicovia, the non-Saccharomyces yeast, milk. We don't sell milk, but somebody said milk works really well. So we said, we'll try it. And then we looked at oak alternatives, Noble products, using granulars, using chips, different flavor profiles. Okay. We did everything we could, which ended up a really solid trial. We shipped out the resulting wine. We bottled it all on the screw cap into splits. We put it through ML. We did everything. And then we shipped it out to 288 different winemakers to do this set of tastings. Basically, we broke down a lot of these bottles into little 50 ml cylinders on the same day. We gave them to the winemaker and said, here, taste these. And we did an online panel. You guys got a few of these sets as well. An online panel where you had to rank 15 parameters, 5 aroma, 5 flavor, 5 mouthfeel, on a scale of 1 to 15. And you would go through each wine. The idea is it took about 30 minutes to do a set of wines. 2-minute break between each wine. So it was actually very precisely done. We generated a lot of data, 30,000 data points, 30,000 tasting notes. And we also analyzed all these wines for smoke taint by our Laffort owner lab, Excel Labs in Bordeaux. They did all the analysis for us. And if you need to send, they also take samples, commercial samples. If you want details on that, just ask, we'll provide them for you. So where are we at now? We've looked at ozone. Ozone's a viable treatment to help. And what we're looking at here is how we can push your wine into commercial acceptability if it has some smoke taint. Right. The number one product is activated carbon, geosorb. Right? That's the product we have. It works. It works in the important arenas of sensory and in analytical. So this spider graph here, going from looks like about, what's that, 8 o'clock flavors. There are 5, going clockwise, there are 5 flavor parameters that were ranked. Then there are 5 aromas starting at about noon, and then 5 mouthfeels that were ranked. And these are the net results of all of the low dose and high dose geosorb trials that we did for all of the smoke taint affected wines. We tried geosorb on all 4 grape varieties. So what we see here is, in general, you can probably see my mouse here, the aroma, like about 1, 2 o'clock there, the aroma ashy, aroma smoky of the control compared to both geosorb treatments, it helped. It reduced some of those aromas. Same factor over here about 9 o'clock. Flavors of smoke and ash were reduced. The wine was a little cleaner. If you look at 11 o'clock here, flavor fruity was actually increased. And where's the other one? Aroma fruity there is a very small reduction in aroma. So just so you're thinking this is activated carbon, this is going to totally strip my wine. It doesn't. We're actually really surprised. We added either a 0.5 or 1 gram per liter of activated carbon to these wines, these red wines. And there were no real comments from people about, oh my God, there's no color here. It was more, oh, they're a little more fruity and they're a little less smoky. So don't worry too much about the perception that you're going to strip your wine. You're going to remove some of the ashy, smoky flavors. That's the good thing, okay? The other thing you get from activated carbon, and believe me, I would not recommend activated carbon, the general rule, but you're helping your smoke taint. That's why we're doing it. Activated carbon geosorb was the only one that saw analytical effect. All right, so I said we had every single thing analyzed. All of the trials were analyzed as well as all the controls. So this is basically the percentage reductions. The free compounds didn't change much, but the total compounds did change. And your totals are the ones that break down over time and release more smoke taint into your wine. The total phenols, that's not your phenolic compounds, that is your phenols related to smoke taint aromas, right? So it's not fantastic. 10% reduction in glycol, 18% reduction in 4-methyl glycol. This is positive. This is really pushing your wines in the right direction, cleaning them up just a little bit, getting them closer to being a commercially acceptable wine. And total phenols knocked out 1/3 of the total phenols, which is good. And the smoke taint analytes, not new phenolic compounds, right? So geosorb worked well on reducing the ashy, smoky flavor profile, and also works on removing the actual molecules responsible for those things. It's not a silver bullet, but it certainly helps what you're doing. Now, the other one we looked at was yeast products. Yeast hulls and inactivated dry yeast. That was actually leaves, gives kind of sweetness and mouthfeel. That, in terms of sensory, this is the same deal here. You've got, well, the clock moved around a little bit, but your aromas, your smoky and your ashy aromas were decreased by both yeast hulls and leaves. Your ashy, tarry, smoky flavors were decreased by the addition of these products. And brownness increased a little bit. And so definitely positive trend But the interesting thing about the yeast products is that there was no analytical difference. And they're basically the same. So you're improving the sensory profile of the wine, but not improving the analytical results. So that's, I mean, I would say if you know you've got smoke taint, you would want to use geosol because it does help out, right? Okay, let's go into the next one. So I don't actually have any analytical data to show you because it was basically the same. Okay, so they're your product options. This one here, reverse osmosis. This is another big one. Excuse me. So I cough. This is actually my personal experience with smoke taint was a while ago. It was 2008 from the Mendocino complex fires, and I had some bad wine. Reverse osmosis was okay then. It has improved considerably. And in 2020, if I look at the Oregon wine industry, Oregon got hit with fires for the first time in a big way last year. Basically, everything went through RO. It helps. This is another tool that most definitely helps. It'll push your wine in the right direction. It'll knock down some of those free compounds and make your wine more commercially acceptable. As I said, nothing to do with the RO business, so I stole this image from the Wine Secrets website. Sorry, but thanks. What I do have, though, is this little guy here in the top right-hand corner. Laffort ROM, it's a beta-glucosidase enzyme. Now, what it does is it releases, it's actually designed for Riesling and aromatic whites. It releases the free compounds from the bound compounds and gives you more free compounds in the wine. The process here is an interesting one because you add the Laffort ROM to your smoke-tainted wine and it starts releasing more free compounds and it makes your wine taste worse, which is disturbing. But then you run it through reverse osmosis and it will take out more of the smoke taint problem because it's removed more of these free aromas. Because over time, as your wine ages, acid hydrolysis basically occurs and the bound compounds that remain in the wine that aren't removed by reverse osmosis start to be released anyway. So the smoke taint can come back over time. So what you're doing with Laffort ROM is you're accelerating that process of removing, of dissociating the free from the bound compounds, and you're able to remove more of the free compounds and end up with a cleaner wine that's got a better lifespan. That's something that was done. That's also Oregon did embrace that a lot. California people just didn't bother picking. In Oregon, they said, "Well, we have the wine. Let's do this process. It'll work well."
Shaun, to do something like that, what kind of dosage rates would you require to be able to kind of release to the free side of things?
That is a good question because it's a lot. It's about 10 times the recommended dose rate. So I think we did trials on 40 grams per hectoliter over an 8-day period. And I mean, at that dose rate you're looking at, it's not cheap. I'll fully admit that. Interestingly, at UC Davis, Anita Oberholster ran trials on beta-glucosidase at 4 grams per hectoliter and said, it doesn't work. And we said, yes, it does. You just need more. So we did a 10-fold increase in dose rate. So it's a lot. I don't know, if you're at the point where you can salvage something and make it workable, it's worth doing. We have a couple of trials. I might be able to get more than one set of trials up to you, Andy, if people want to try those wines. It's a cool tool.
That'd be great.
All right, so, and that's, unfortunately, that's it for the tools. That's what we have, all right? That 20 minutes just went past real quick. Summary. Do something, right? Don't just assume that it's all good, you're fine, you can fix it later, and just pick and process your grapes like you normally do, and you'll end up with smoke-tainted wines, right? Be proactive. Do some analytical stuff, find out what's there, do some micro ferments, find out what's going on in your vineyard, and be proactive in helping things. Ozone may help. That's a good one, right? I don't know much about it, but there's solid reports from it. If you've had obvious smoke impact, activated carbon helps for sure, analytically and on a sensory basis. And it's not as bad as you are thinking. It won't strip your wine terribly. Actually, it won't strip your wine, right? It's just going to take out some of the smoke taint. Yeast products are good if there's a less obvious risk, you're not sure. You can mitigate some of that sensory aspect, and you can also boost up some of the mouthfeel too, which is a good thing, right? We didn't try both at the same time, but I suspect that could work quite well. Using beta-glucosidase coupled with reverse osmosis, RO works. Beta-glucosidase helps, right? So those two together work really well. And then this last point, actually this is my last slide really, except for the thank you slide. Make a big wine. This was the single biggest shift in all of our understandings that happened last year, because previously we used to say treat the fruit very gently. This is specifically for red wines. Be very gentle and don't do too many pump overs. Press off quickly. Blah blah blah. The problem with that is every single thing you do to extract color and flavor and tannin will also extract smoke taint, right? So the original thought was, well, just extract less. The result is, though, if you are super gentle, you'll end up with a thin, weak wine that tastes like smoke. Whereas if you go to make a big wine and you just proceed as per usual, use some enzymes, use some tannins, use some lots of pump overs, etc., you'll have the same amount of smoke taint, but you'll have more flavor to support the wine. And then if you add carbon, if you run it through RO, you'll be able to beat the wine up more to get rid of that smoke taint, and you'll end up with a wine that is still has reasonable substance and reasonable stuffing. That was a big shift, right? And it makes a lot of sense. They were the successful wines that were made last year. Like I said, that's my last slide. Well, that's it. That's probably the fastest webinar I've ever done. I wish I could say more. So, Andy, did we get any questions there? Is there anything that came up?
I've got a question here actually. Should activated carbon and yeast products be used in juice early fermentation stages? And can they be used in combination to increase effectiveness?
That is a good question. In terms of early, absolutely. Just put it in there. When we did all of our trials, we added all the products at crushing, basically. Now the second question, I don't know the answer specifically, but I do want to know. If anybody wants to do trials, let me know. We'll support that. I would think, my personal thing would be, I would say no. I think what I would do would be get the carbon in there first, a lot. You got the smoke taint, add 1 gram per liter. Press it, rack it, and then add your yeast products after that. And the reason I do that is I wouldn't want to get any interaction between the yeast products and the carbon itself. You don't want any adsorption of carbon stuck to your yeast products. That's not going to help you at all. Right? So I would personally do them separately. Do I have any science and data to support that? No, but it's my instinct as to being familiar with both of these products. I would do them sequentially rather than together.
Okay. I got another question here. Is enzyme use generally going to increase smoke taint impact on wine, such as beta-glucosidase being used to release free compounds from pre-RO filtration?
Yes, it'll make your wine taste. Beta-glucosidase will probably make your wine taste worse. So if you're going to use that, you have to use RO for sure. Okay. Now, pectic enzymes, such as HE Grand Cru and Laffort's fruit, they're going to focus more on extracting color and flavor and tannins, right? So they won't have a great impact on your smoke taint in the sense that what they'll mainly impact is you're getting your flavors out of your grape skins for your winemaking. But the beta-glucosidase will definitely increase your smoke taint, and you need to run reverse osmosis after that. And if you're going to do that, you need about 8 to 10 days. So you basically add your enzyme, keep it at 18, 20 Celsius. Sorry, I had to convert that in my head from Fahrenheit. Keep it at 18, 20 Celsius, and then about 8 to 10 days later, that's when you run it through RO. Yeah, general winemaking enzymes will help get more flavor and more color out of your wine, which is
a positive thing.
Yeah. Okay. Another one here for white wine fermentation. Can I mix Geazorb followed by polymust in the must before fermentation? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And what Noble oak products were shown to have good sensory impacts on smoke tainted wines?
That's also a very good question. So one of the early, another solid theory was using untoasted granulars during fermentation would adsorb the smoke taint compounds. It kind of works, but they tend to re-release quite quickly back into the wine. They didn't have a huge impact in a sensory manner. What did work? Basically, all of the different flavored chips, like the spice, the cherry spice, etc., shifted the wine's flavor profile around. None of them really hid the smoke taint, but they changed the flavor dimension. Right. So what you would do to use oak alternatives is you start out, use activated carbon. You know you can get rid of some of the smoke taint that way. Then rebuild the wine with some yeast products and some mouthfeel products, and then add some oak chips in a different, like do some trials, right, and do some different flavor profiles to sort of shift the flavor profile around to tweak things. But there were no analytical effects from Noble, unfortunately. But they did, and the sensory factor, there was never a clear preference for one, but they all shifted the flavor profiles around, which is in good ways. You know, you could shift your wine around and make it more oak oriented rather than smoke oriented.
Okay. Okay. I think that's all we've got.
Okay.
Which is awesome. Keeping it nice and short for harvest morning.
Yeah, you guys get out there and pick some grapes, people. There's fruit out there.
If anybody has any questions further on, feel free to contact me or Shaun, and we can definitely help you out.
Actually, I got I just realized my address is not there. This was done for another presentation. I'm Shaun.Richardson at Laffort.com, but I mean, anything you send to Andy, if he's got any questions, they'll come back to me. We're happy to help out. And email Caitlin for a link to the recording. It might take a couple of hours. I have to talk to Caitlin about how quickly we can get that processed and onto the YouTube channel. But
Okay.
It'll be there. We'll make that happen.
That's wonderful. So yeah, there will be a link for people to watch at a further date, and that'll be on the YouTube channel. So good to go.
Cool.
Great.
All right.
Thanks everybody for joining us, and thank you, Shaun, for your time. Always good to get an insight from what's happening south of the border, and we'll go from there.
Next time we'll do a proactive, exciting presentation. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for hosting, Andy. Appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thanks, guys.
Okay.